Hi there guys, welcome back to the comprehensive guide series for Daemon X Machina. This video we will be tackling the colossal immortal known as Rebellion. Now before we start, please leave a like, a comment and subscribe down below for more content like this in the future. Now Rebellion's a unique immortal. Your first encounter with them, technically because there's two of them, you don't actually take them down. It's Crimson Lord and Diablo that finish them off. Now you get a taste of how horrifying the Colossals are at that stage. This massive humanoid robot mech thing with a massive sword the size of a skyscraper swinging it at you. It's quite intimidating. So, let's get on to what Rebellion can do. Now, the obvious one is he has a massive sword, he can swing it. The range on the sword is massive, and if it does hit you, it is going to do a huge amount of damage. Good news is, he can't swing it backwards. So, avoid his front and you've not really got an issue. However, if you're at distance, he can still hit you. He swings it, the main hit is quite long, but it also emits a beam, so even if you are quite a distance away, there's still a chance he can hit you with the sword, so be aware of that. Now the next abilities that he has, in terms of long range and things like that, he periodically will maintain certain poses and he'll fire missiles, bullets, all manner of little projectiles that come out of him. He also has a ton of little AIs that fly around him and come in and assist them at times. They're pretty bog standard ones, quite easy to take down. Now, when it comes to other abilities, he has a massive shield as well, and if you focus the front point on him, quite often he'll use the shield and his sword to block it. The shield can be destroyed, so if you focus it down, it will eventually break. So that is sometimes one of the best strategies if you're trying to go for his main power core. Now quite often you'll find if you're up close to the front Rebellion, to the point where his sword is a bit of a pointless thing for him to swing, he will raise either of his legs and try and boot you in the face. So he has quite a big swing up to this. You see him bracing for it and then getting ready to swing his foot at you, so it's quite easy to avoid. Best way to do it is just boost backwards, usually out of his range, because he has quite short stubby little legs, so it's not as dangerous as you would expect. There is other moves that he can use in terms of melee. He does a kind of elbow bash on occasion if you're behind him and shooting at one of his elbows. I tend not to see that in the standard fight. I tend to see it during the Alpha and Bravo beta fight. So I don't know if that's exclusive to those or not, but I've not really seen it that often during, or at all, during the standard fight. Don't know if that's because he's getting burned down too quickly or not, but it is what it is. Now, he can also do a jump, so if you're at a distance from him, or he wants to get some distance from you, he can on occasion just leap into the air and then crash down on the ground. So if you're on the floor, it can do massive damage, or if you're in the air and he lands on top of you, it can do a lot of damage. This is also coupled with the occasional charge, and he goes a fair distance, but obviously unless you're directly in front of him, it's not going to be able to do any real sustainable damage to you, so you don't need to worry about it too much in that sense. Now, the last main attack that I have witnessed during Rebellion is after you get him down to about 50%. 4 will comment about the Immortal Fractal, and he'll power up and do some glow-in-the-dark crap. Now, I've only been able to see this during the beta fight. If anybody wants to comment about whether he does it during Alpha, he definitely doesn't do it in the standard fight, but during the beta fight, he will raise his sword in the air, blade pointing down, and he'll crash it into the ground. Creates a massive shockwave around him and deals a ton of damage. You're looking at potentially anywhere between a third and a half of your health. So if he's been damaging you quite a bit and then hits you with that, you can be easily caught off guard by it. It is quite a damaging attack. Now, when it comes to weak points, he has 4 small weak points, 1 on each elbow, which you need to break armor first and then smash the power core, 2 on his knees, same, break some armor, smash his power core, and a 5th in his chest. After you break the shell, there's then an energy field around it, similar to what you'd see on the boss fight for Eclipse. You need to break that down and then you blast that to hell. Now, the right elbow is the one that is holding the sword. Destroying that power core is probably the most important one to take out, because when you destroy that, he drops his sword, and you can use the sword against him. If you fly over to the sword, press the interact button, and aim it carefully, you can actually just slice him with his own sword, and it does a massive amount of damage, and it's incredibly satisfying to do. So I'd heavily recommend that in most cases. As for my strategy, Rebellion's an interesting fight. He's not difficult, but if you make mistakes, he will pretty much do a ton of damage to you. The key to actually fighting him, especially in the later stage, is focus on his right elbow. Once you take out his sword, it limits what he can actually do drastically. His sword is his biggest damage dealer, and as I mentioned earlier, when he goes into his second stage, he can use that shockwave attack, which is incredibly damaging. If he doesn't have the sword, he can't do that. So taking out that elbow and then taking out the power core in the elbow, dropping the sword and then slashing him with it is the best way to go. Now, something I discovered is if you are using 2 gun arms, you won't be able to interact with the sword. So be aware of that if you're using gun arms, that taking out the sword is fine, but you won't be able to use it against them. Which, in the end, it isn't a big deal, but it's a chunk of damage that you're going to miss out on. But it's an equal trade either way. The gun arms do a ton of damage. Now, best weapons I've found in order to deal damage to him, anything that's got really good accuracy and heavy rate of fire. He quite often stands in positions to either block damage from the front to stop with his shield, to fire missiles, or to swing his sword. So he'll stand still quite a lot, which gives you a lot of opportunities to focus down the certain points on his body. It's difficult at times, if you're the top damage dealer, to keep shooting into one of his arms. Sometimes the top damage dealer should really just focus on the front. But if, for example, you're not doing the most damage, you just hang around his back. In the video you'll see quite often I'll try and circle around him to no avail, because he just keeps trying to follow me because I'm doing the most damage to him. But essentially, as long as you take out the sword, there's not a huge amount you need to worry about. Just dodge all of his big attacks, because he telegraphs almost everything. There is not something that he'll just do suddenly. He kind of takes a long time to wind up to a sword swing, or to a kick, or to a charge. Everything is incredibly predictable. Not to be said that I don't get hit by this stuff, because I'm not perfect, and I'm sometimes more concerned with pumping out the damage and trying to take out a point in his body, but you can dodge 99% of everything he does. Now, Rebellion is unique in comparison to the other Immortals when it comes to his blueprints. He has a full armor set. So, 2 of the pieces come from the standard fight, 1 of the pieces comes from his alpha fight, and the last 2 pieces come from his beta fight. The armor set itself looks exactly like Rebellion. It's got some decent stats on it, only 1 slot on each piece though, but it is one of the more defensive pieces of armor that you can get there. Quite a lot of the time you see people using a piece or 2 in their builds in PvP just to bump up their VP and armor. So it's a decent set, especially if you want to run a tanky build. There's not really much else to say about it. It's just an armor set. There's downsides to each armor piece, and some of it will be usable and useful in certain builds for certain, but that's for everybody to kind of dictate themselves and play around with. Now, the other blueprint that you can have, there is two versions of, and one is in his alpha fight, and the other is in his beta fight. Now that is the Chronos Break. As you can see on the screen, it is a massive laser sword. It's the same one that he uses, just a smaller version. Now, when it comes to using it, it's incredibly strong. It hits like a truck, and is pretty handy in a fight. Now, it uses Femto when you swing it, so there is a limit potentially to how often you can swing it around, and the downside it has in comparison to the other melee weapons like the Dansley and the physical swords basically, is that it can be dual wielded, but you can't do a dual swing, so you can't get a bonus damage of having two melee weapons in your hand. So when you wield this, you're best off just wielding it in one hand and a gun in the other. So that was the video, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as usual, please leave a like, comment and subscribe, and catch us next time on the next comprehensive guide series. There's not many bosses left, so it's almost a complete series. Either way, thank you again for watching, and good night.